An examination of data pertaining to around 353 companies out of the Fortune 500 companies, and found that companies which have the highest number of women in their most senior level positions outperform their peers in the same industry. So, same industry which have lower number of women in their senior positions. So the percentage increase in profitability for companies which had the most number of women at senior levels was on an average at 34%. So we all know that gender diversity and inclusiveness is not about right or wrong, but about opportunities lost or gained. So having said that, I would like to introduce or take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Niru. And thank you actually for making the time for this. Dr. Niru has been powerfully impacting and transforming lives through a unique blend of expertise in modern medicine, psychology, coaching skills, and energy-based healing. She's a medical doctor, psychologist, Mars Venus coach, pranic healer, a Reiki grandmaster teacher, and a hypnotherapist. So after 20 years of experience in clinical practice, she felt an intense need to help even more deeply in the personal and the professional front. She realized that conventional medicine heals only the disease and not the individual. This led her to acquire a qualification in psychology and become a Mars Venus coach. Dr. Niru is now a senior associate with Barbara Annis and Associates. Barbara and John are world leaders in the field of gender intelligence. A creative and a powerful blend of John and Barbara's work combined with Dr. Niru's rich experience makes her training or session a profound, life-changing event. And again, Dr. Niru, thank you so much for making the time. Over to you.
I am a woman. Relationships matter to me. So does profession. So do children. And so do I. Sometimes that gets overwhelming. Sometimes I'm confused. Often I don't get what I want. Hi, everybody. That's who I am. And I believe that's who a lot of you are. So in this session, I'm going to try to make it as interactive as is possible in a large group. And I would request you that at times when I'm going to ask you some questions or ask you to raise up your hands, please, I will get much more of a feedback and interaction if you could really raise your hands high up. Is that fine? Yeah? So I'm going to begin by asking you a few questions. How many of you do think that there's a difference between men and women? How many of you have read the book Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus? Wow. How many of you have heard of it but not read it? So almost everybody's heard of it. And I had the intention at some point to read it and find out how we really are different. Okay, how many of you face frustrations, personal life I know, at workplace, because you're women? Thank you, that's an honest reply. Okay, so I must share with you that I'm absolutely thrilled to be addressing an all-women's group, and I always am. You know why? That's because here we can talk about how glorious women are without the men feeling threatened. And we can also talk about the areas that still hold us back and that we wouldn't necessarily want to talk in front of the men. So to bring it out, I'll give you a few examples of my workshops. In the name of mixed teams, what do we typically have in a workshop? Say 18 men and 2, maybe 1 woman. And do you think what needs to come up comes up? Not necessarily. Women are inhibited. When there's a large number of men and the ratio is so disproportionate, women are inhibited. So a few examples is this. One of the workshops, there was one lady, and as she came in, I said, welcome, your perspective is going to be very important to us here. She says, yeah, thanks, but you know what, I think more like a man. Now, that's interesting because I've never seen a man say, I think more like a woman. We need to think about that. And then she says, she sat through the session, at tea break she comes to me and says, you know what you're talking makes so much sense, but these guys, they're never going to get it. so it's a waste of time. I said, okay, let's go through the rest of the session and see what happens. At lunchtime, she came and said the same thing to me. Then, somewhere along the way, there was this light-hearted talk about how women love to shop and how they take such a long time in shop and how they say this pink is better than this pink and I bought this pink last time. So all the guys were, light-heartedly laughing and joking about that. Now, this lady takes offense and she says, Dr. Niru, I don't think I'm liking this. I think they're being mean, and I think let's stick to professional examples, please. So you see how many defenses come up when there is a disproportion in the ratio, and when the women are not able to be themselves. So she didn't like that. And then I said to her, okay, but we can view it differently. I take a very long time to shop, but that does not mean that I do not follow intellectual pursuits. I research a lot, I read a lot, I work a lot, but I take a long time to shop. And that's because I like to be well dressed, and I'm proud of that. Okay, so that was a different perspective. At the end of the workshop, she still said the same thing. They're never going to get it. Okay, the next example was, I was addressing very senior leaders. And one lady puts up her hand. She was sensing that what she is going to say may be a little controversial. So she puts up her hand kind of tentatively and she looks around like this and she says, I'm wondering when they're talking about inclusion and about women, why are they talking about women employees and why are they not talking about women leaders and why are they not talking about contemporaries? See, her point was very strong and very valid, and she actually addressed what is an unconscious mindset. But she was so hesitant to say that. And then I brought it out in the session and I said, look, she wanted to say that and it's a very valid point, but she did this and then she looked around apologetically, which we often do. A third incident was, it was a Women's Day gathering, a large gathering, and after addressing the whole session, there was a beautiful response from the audience, and after the session, somebody gets up and says, Dr. Niru, you're right about all these differences, but we hope to do away with them in maybe a year or a year and a half. To which I say, do we want to do away with them? No, we don't want to do away with them. We want to retain the differences. We want to celebrate the differences because that's what diversity is all about. Nature did not intend us to be similar. Each flower, each animal, if you watch National Geographic Channel, you'll see how beautiful nature has made different flowers, different species, and they all have their own function, their own role. We don't want it to be different. But having said that, there is something about diversity, there is something about being different that makes us uncomfortable. Actually, if we understand diversity in its proper sense, it's a huge growth in our personality. Because whenever something is different from us, we have an urge, it's almost like an itch to judge. Are you better than me or am I better than you? Let's say E.T. walks into the room right now. What are we going to do? We're going to look at it. Is he more equipped than us or are we more equipped? Is he more developed or are we more developed? That itch to judge is something which is so inherent and very often we cannot control it. It just is there. It's like this, that when Adam and Eve, when the sin happened, what did they do? They covered the one part which was different. They didn't cover any other part. They put the fig leaves there because that was different. So we are uncomfortable around diversity. And that is something that if we consciously work on, I think it expands our mindset into becoming much more wholesome human beings. But a lot of this is unconscious. It's not really in our control when these reactions come up. Like I said, it's almost like an itch. It's not in our control. Did you know that 88% of your mind is unconscious and only 12% is conscious? As huge as 88%. And what does unconscious mean? Unconscious means that we have absolutely no idea what's coming up from there. Most of the unconscious conditioning is done in childhood. By age 8, by age 12, a lot of conditioning has already happened. So when we are with children, a lot of what we are saying to them, suppose we are not giving them time or we are not giving them enough importance, it gets registered in that 88%. And that's what's coming out in us about our conditionings. Our conditionings about gender, our conditionings about life on whole. I'm going to do a short exercise with you to demonstrate that. Are you ready for that? Okay. So sit back in your chairs and close your eyes. Take a deep breath, breathing in from your nose, filling up your chest and abdomen with your breath, and let go. As you let go, you feel your body relaxing. Once again, a nice deep breath, expanding your chest and abdomen, and let go. One last time, but this time hold your breath. And now very slowly, let go. I want you to now imagine a nice, juicy, plump, yellow lemon with puckering skin and a very lemony smell. Take a knife and swish, cut that lemon. The lemon juice sprays on your face and the lemony smell increases. You take half of that lemon and squeeze some of that juice on your tongue. The sour lemon juice. Okay, open your eyes. How many of you had water in your mouth? That's unconscious for you. There's no lemon here. And if I hold a gun on your head and I say salivate, you cannot do so because it's an automatic response. Even if your life is at stake, you cannot do it. But the thought of the lemon brings all this up. That's how powerful the unconscious is. So we have lived so far in a social and organizational culture which basically has a masculine tone. Therefore, to be accepted in workplace, women have started believing that they have to behave and think like a man to be accepted. Is that true? How many of you agree with that? Okay. So, the inner world of the woman and the outer world of the woman is entirely different. We're posing and we're not sure why we are posing, but we have no clue how not to. When I ask people in the corporate world, are you having masks? Most of them say yes. In fact, one of the participants said, I'm so busy protecting my mask that I can't be productive. How many of you feel you have masks? Let's have a very honest answer to this. That's not an honest answer. At all. Okay. Okay, so how many of you feel that you mostly wear a mask? Very often wear a mask? Yeah. You know, this is exactly what happens. In forums, people hesitate. When you talk to them one-to-one, then people say, yes, we have to. There are times when you have to put on a mask about being very happy and you're not. You have to put on a mask about being comfortable when you're not. You have to put on a mask about liking your workplace culture when you don't. You have to put on a mask about being satisfied when you're not. So when we're posing, it's like we've lost the key to our house and we can't get in. And the stress of staying away from home for too long almost hurts. And we're not sure why. There is so much going on inside us, but we are not satisfied, we are not happy, we are confused. The very first sentence, we are often confused. So what I'm going to do now is, many of you put up your hands when you said that yes, there are challenges at workplace. Now those challenges, some of those challenges are internal and some of those challenges are external. What we are going to do today is I'm going to show you some of the examples of the internal and external challenges, and then we must find some tips to take back with us. You must go back from here enriched to be able to handle those challenges better than you did till today. So how I'm going to do that is, I'm going to show you some brain science. Eye-opening brain science which shows you how different the brains of men and women are. how different the wiring of the brains of men and women are, and why that makes such a lot of difference, and how we think differently, how we process differently, how we lead differently, how we make decisions differently. That might put us in a much more comfort level about accepting our own selves and our own thoughts, our own emotions, our own personalities. And then I'm going to take you through how to decrease your stress. And lastly, a few tips about how to communicate better. Namrata spoke about the business case. We'll just briefly touch about the business case, because it's actually like a miracle that's happened. The miracle is that suddenly the world is realizing that we need women at every level, especially at the top. And when the world is realizing that, then we get more and more opportunities to have forums like this, to understand these issues better, and to make changes for the betterment. So this, for me, it's like a miracle. When I started the workshops, say 7-8 years back, at that time, it used to be a tough task for me to convince the organizations that this is something we need. Today, it's not. Today, I'm invited everywhere. Because diversity, gender diversity, has become a priority for the organizations. So that's something that we all have to feel a lot of happiness about, something to celebrate for us, right? Okay, so before we go on to that, let's do a little small exercise where maybe 4 of you each, just one row, half row each, can just discuss for 5 minutes what are the challenges that you face in workplace as women. Okay, so just half row each. We were wanting to have cluster settings, we could not, but let's do best with what we have. 4, 5 of you, just discuss among yourself what are the challenges that you face as women in workplace. One minute more. I'm going to ask some of the rows to speak up about what they have discussed. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, we're going to go alternate rows, and one from here and one from here. So can we have row 1 from here, please share with us.
Actually, women get to spend more time socialized with male employees, like they go partying, smoking, that kind of time which women cannot have, so which is kind of giving more of an edge to the male employees then.
The boys' network.
Yes.
Yes, over smokes and drinks and some jokes. Appraisals are affected.
Here's where women cannot feel comfortable.
Yeah, appraisals are affected. They get more information. They become more comfortable. They're more like buddies.
Right?
Yes. Okay. What else?
All three. And this is more to do from the social sphere. At least in Indian context, we have more expectation on women than on men. So take for example late night calls or whatever. For a given amount of work pressure, equal amount of work pressure, men are able to handle it a lot better than women, because women have other kind of pressures, family, kids, household.
Yeah.
When I stay, I'm attending a meeting after 10 o'clock. What goes on in my mind is when I have to wake up next morning and how will I take care of my lunch, cook and all that stuff.
Correct.
So that is another. And the third one is a kind of a stereotypical expectations from... Yeah.
Would you like to? Yeah. Like if it's a women employee, then some things are like she can't plan well, she can't do this well, this is known. So such type of stereotypic things are coming over the women.
Absolutely, absolutely correct.
Yeah. So
Great.
we had all these three.
You've said very valid points. Great. I'm going to take them up one by one. Third row from here, please. Can we have?
Hi, we completely agree with the points that were brought up by that team there. And just adding on, what we also feel is the culture of, excuse the word, but bitchiness. We don't feel there's a positive framework of support amongst women employees and colleagues. I don't know if you all have encountered situations where women themselves have been huge obstacles or hindrances for other women to probably progress forward. That would be our point to carry on from that team.
Absolutely. I'm going to take that up too. Great. Fifth row from here, please. Fifth row.
Okay, so I absolutely agree. I think that's a really good point. We didn't think of that one, but it's very true. So from our point of view, we were talking about sort of managerial roles and sort of conference calls. And some of the things that we saw was in the context of conference calls or when we have team meetings and things, men can't always make good eye contact with women who are raising valid points and things. They struggle with that. And from my context, as you can probably tell, I'm not from India. So I've been here a couple of years. But one of the things I've noticed is that as a manager coming over and joining a team of local people who were all male, they struggled with having a younger female boss who was probably white as well, and they found it hard to adjust to that.
So they had problems adjusting because she was a woman. You're talking about yourself?
Yeah, I'm talking about myself. So I was a younger female.
And because you were from a different country.
And I was younger.
Yeah, okay.
So I think there's 3 levels of diversity in there.
Okay. And you had a team which was all men?
It was all men, yeah.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. Okay.
Quite a few.
So can I know your name, please?
My name's Angie.
Angie?
Yeah.
Angie, did you feel that it was a challenge for them to accept, let's say, instructions from women or get commands from women? Was it a challenge?
Yeah, I think the whole thing was none of my team had ever had a female manager before, so I don't think they've ever had that expectation before.
Okay.
I think so. Part of it was they didn't know how to accept instruction from a woman who wasn't their mother, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the other part was also the fact that I've come in with a very different cultural background. So, the way we do things in the UK is very different from the way things are done in India.
Yeah.
And whereas I can accept and adapt my style to the Indian culture to some extent very quickly, there's some stuff that will take a lot longer to learn. So there's probably a bit of both in there.
Okay, thank you. 7th row from here, please.
Hello? Yeah. There are some places where I saw where you have peers, men, women, when they are there. They just don't like the women to go up the ladder. They try to put something obstacle in your way so that you don't go ahead. Typically jealous men, they just can't see you go upward, though you are really good. And when they see that woman, whenever she is in an organization leading teams, she usually gives the mother feel where you try to protect the team, you give them something, nurture the team, that kind of stuff is there with women. Same thing, I don't see that with men, and when they see that the women are doing it and they can't play the same role, they try putting obstacles, outright. I have seen
They
it.
feel threatened.
Yes, yeah,
Yes.
very obvious.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. 9th row from here, please.
Hi. So it is applicable when you have kids. So for a mother, it is always a guilt trip when you stay up late in the office, when you go to, you go on site. But for a father, I'm jealous of them in that context also. So, it just comes naturally to them. Work is a priority. But for a woman, work is a priority. If you are ambitious, you at the same time, you go through that guilt trip. Because, I have been victim of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that is a challenge. Another one, what we were discussing here, that to penetrate into a group initially. So it's not so easy. I think other people also have, voiced this, that because it's very easy for them to go for a smoke, and that because of, cultural issues also we have in India. So maybe if you are not in India, so things are, much better. Because here when women drives and everybody looks at, okay, women is driving. But I don't see the same thing, same thing happening, outside India.
Yeah.
And this another thing, which again, even I have faced, go up the ladder. It doesn't come easy for a man to take instructions from you.
Yeah.
They just take it, how can a woman tell us that, we should do this and we shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
So, and when you are being led, they are very happy. So when you come over the top, it doesn't come easy. So I have been to both. So, I have faced that there the things were much easier. Here the things are not so easier.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Last row there, please.
Hi. What we were discussing was essentially the same thing, the boys network. That's usually the problem. And the thing is, a lot of decisions and lot of impressions are made in these boys network discussions,
Absolutely.
which affect our day-to-day work. And you would like to participate in that, but it's a pretty close circle.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. How many of you agreed with all the points that were said? Fantastic. Yes. Actually, I wanted to bring that up. There are a lot of things which won't apply to you. But if you look at this room, I think 90 or more than 90% of people right now said that we agreed with everything. So what happens is, when we're talking about a subject as delicate as this, we're also taking into considerations the conditionings, the cultural background, and a lot of other things. There are things which don't apply to you, and there are things which do apply to you. But if it is as large a percentage as 95% in this one room, then even if it doesn't apply to you, as a leader, as a corporate woman, you need to know about it. That this is what the majority of the women are feeling. You may be entirely different. You may have balanced yourself so beautifully that these challenges don't affect you anymore. Unconsciously, you may have handled them so effectively. But if they're affecting the rest of your team, you need to hear it. But what happens is, typically, we go into, no, this one is not true, it doesn't apply to me. It's almost, have you heard conversation between two women? One woman is telling the other woman about her child and says, my child really has an attention problem in school. The other one says, no, in that case, I'm very lucky. My child can really concentrate well. What is happening? We have such a strong urge to tell about our own experience that we do not let it sink into us what is the experience of the majority. For women to go up the ladder, we were just talking about going up the ladder. Again, that expansion is required to know what is going on with the majority. Yeah? Okay. Now let's take up a few of these challenges, especially the external ones. We talked about male stereotyping, where it still is prevalent in certain places. Females will be allotted roles which are typically female, as in HR, distribute handouts, make coffee. It still happens. Very unconsciously, you're not even aware of it, very unconsciously it happens. In one of the workshops I was talking about it, and one lady says, yes, when you were asking, can a volunteer please come and write on the board, my urge was to get up and go. But I literally sat with my hands under my bottom, I'm not going to get up. Cutting the cake. Yes, absolutely. So those stereotypes still do exist. Yeah. Then boardrooms, meetings, women are still restricted. And sometimes when they try to speak up, men will roughshod them, will speak over them, and women do not have a tendency to speak over somebody. They're probably too polite. One, they don't have that heavy tone of voice. Second, they're too polite. So they go out of the meeting thinking, I should have said this. I wanted to say this, but I couldn't, I didn't get a chance to. How many of you can relate to that? Yeah. Yeah? Then it is treated. Yes. Yes, absolutely. 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 Yes, yes.
Has been over and all of that, but there was a phenomenal amount of money that was being pumped into getting women to do engineering, yet a majority of the women chose to do education. to study education. So even in an egalitarian society where some of these battles have already been fought, women are still making these stereotypical choices as well, which could have something to do with conditioning, other factors, but I think it's a two-way street.
Yeah, absolutely. Very valid point. So I have a slide, but I don't have it in this deck, which actually gives a bell curve about if you look at the analytical capabilities of men, the peak is, yes, men. The number of men who have great analytic capabilities is more men. And the number of women who have good intuitive capabilities is more women. So it's a curve which goes like this. But then there is a large chunk in the center where there is an overlap. The peak might be more in men this side and women this side. But there is a huge overlap. Also, having said that, the intuitive capabilities are also very important in business. Now that we know much more about emotional intelligence, and the emotions that were made wrong till now are being considered as strengths, we know that intuitive capabilities are also very much needed. About the aggression point, in almost every workshop, when we talk about these pain points, it comes up aggressive women bosses. Every single workshop I do, in the pain points, in the challenges, the men also write aggressive female bosses, and the females also write aggressive female bosses, something about the bitchiness that we spoke about here. Some of it is real, and some of it is perceived. Like you said, if I say the same thing, it's not going to be taken. If a man says the same thing, it's going to be taken. Right? That one is real. But perceived is that it's just happening inside you. That you are thinking, if you say this, it's not going to be taken well. So both the things happen. Also real is, it's true that as women get more and more senior, they become more and more man-like. Because they were not taught these diversity issues, these gender differences at this stage. So I often find very senior women who say, she has to choose. You spoke about work-life balance. And they say she has to choose. She has to choose between a family and work. If her family is her priority, why does she come for work? It's the senior women themselves who say that, unfortunately. Perhaps it is because they had a rough time coming to where they did. And at that time, there were no such facilities as work at home, flexi hours. None of that existed. And because they've had to rough it out so much, they're kind of intolerant. And the hormones inside them have become more and more male-like. This is something we really, really have to guard against, and I'll be coming to that shortly. Okay. These are some of the very obvious challenges that we are talking about. Some of the less obvious are, so I was speaking to my Mars Venus CEO a few days back, and it was a bit of an intense, controversial discussion. And after a while, he says, "Oh, Niru, you're such a woman." Now, he was saying it very good-naturedly, let me tell you that. Here is where a bit of the patronizing comes in. That he's very fondly saying, "Oh, you're such a woman." But if you go deeper, what is he saying? You're a woman, you're a little confused, you're stretching things a bit too much, you're over-processing, you're talking about it too much. Along with saying that, he's saying all of that. And you know what? Despite being gender intelligent, you know what my reply was? And immediately I bit my tongue after that. No, but rich. Why was I trying to justify that? Why did I not say, yes, I'm a woman and proud to be one? The immediate tendency is to justify, no, I'm not behaving in a typically womanly way. So this is something which happens every day. Another, my husband says to me, I was talking about some issue to him, and he says to me, "So now I'm gender intelligent, so I'm not going to give you a solution on this. I'm just listening." What is he really saying? I know the answer. You're just unnecessarily getting lost. You're traveling in too many places. But I'm being tolerant about it and I'm keeping my mouth shut. But inside my mind, I know the answer, and I also know that you're unnecessarily traveling in all these places. Again, something which happens so unconsciously and all the time. So these are some of the very real challenges. Then another one is that when a woman talks about being overwhelmed and handling a lot of issues and a lot of work, the men will say, "Why do you create all this paraphernalia around it? It's not necessary. Do much less. Keep to the basics. How many of you relate to that? Yeah. And that gets so irritating, and then you set out on a path to prove that this paraphernalia is necessary. If it wasn't, things around you will collapse and will not be as nice as they are. Right? So then the war kind of starts. Then you set about proving. See, this collapsed. See, you were talking about this being paraphernalia. See how important this was. How many of you relate to that? Yes. So these are some of the external challenges. Coming to the internal challenges. Guilt. Somebody spoke about guilt. We are guilty. We are balancing the home life and the work life, and we are guilty about it. Constantly. I think one thing in the woman's mind constantly is guilt. Guilt about succeeding. If a woman is blessed with a lot of abundance, she still has difficulty receiving that abundance. Because somewhere she feels it's wrong to shine. It's wrong to succeed. She will talk to a group of other people and talk about her misfortunes and her difficulties just so that she should not appear arrogant and look as if she's shining too much. That itself becomes, you conspire against the unspoken rule that women cannot experience heaven on earth. And any woman, the society, the organization cries out loud that any woman who dares to break the glass ceiling is something to be looked at with suspicion. So women themselves conspire against that and start talking about their misfortunes so that they should not look arrogant or so that their success should not shine as brightly as it should. How many of you relate to that? Yeah. Correct. Correct. See, women have an intense need for bonding, to be accepted and to be one with the group. This is one reason which makes them, no, I'm like you. I'm not more successful like anybody else. I'm like you. Don't not love me. Don't unlove me just because I'm being successful. Perhaps I will lose your love if I'm more successful. We spoke about the unconscious. It's not in our control really. But by becoming aware of it, today we are becoming aware of it. I think that's the first step. The unconscious mind is also hugely powerful. My father used to say, all you have to do is to become aware of what you're going through right now. As soon as you're aware of it, don't try to correct it. The unconscious mind is so powerful, it corrects itself. So if we are becoming aware of it today, it is definitely the first step. I flew in only last night. I was seeing some of you in the lift yesterday. How nicely, I think this is a forum which everybody is enjoying because everybody together, giggling, enjoying, all women. Sharing, bonding, giggling at one moment, talking about depression the other moment. How important it is to bond together, right? At breakfast, I was seeing two little girls. And there was one small girl and one bigger girl. Mother says, go out in the lawn and play. I'm watching, it's okay. They go out. The younger one tells the older one, if you have any trouble, I will help you. So it's so inherent for a woman to be accepted, want to be accepted, to want to be loved. But the awareness that comes at this stage is, you will not be unloved if you shine. You will not be unloved if you're successful. Yes, Rashmi. Yeah, so I think it's more of a belief. It's a strong belief that we will be more accepted if we are saying that we are also vulnerable and weak in certain areas. It may not necessarily be the truth. In my workshops, I make people do a group exercise where I say each group talks about one achievement. The men will come up with, I did this in this year, these were my numbers, this was my success, I. The women will say, we. And she will also say, because I had such a beautiful boss, She encouraged me so much. As a team, we did it. Or she will even give the credit to her parents. It's very difficult for her to take credit. And even after I tell them, okay, now do a revised way, it's still difficult for them to do it. So I think it's become too strong a belief. But if you look at authentic power, if you look at a woman who is standing in her place with authentic power, she will not, her energy will not hurt you. And yet she can speak about her strengths. And I think we all want to rise to that place of elegance. Yeah? Okay. So coming back to guilt, it's guilty about working, it's guilty about not working. It's guilty about being successful, it's guilty about not being successful. It's guilty about being emotional. It's guilty about not looking after kids. Guilty all the time. And then this thing about being accepted. Women have perhaps too strong a need for approval. What will this one say? What will my team say? What will my boss say? Too much. Because of that, they hold back. Because of that, they sometimes don't speak up where they should. The fear of being rebuffed. What if I look stupid? What if everybody thinks this is such a silly answer? And sometimes we spoke about men feeling jealous. Sometimes in meetings, men will say what they have to say and perhaps louder because they are feeling threatened. They're very competitive. They're so competitive that they sometimes roughshod the woman just because of an inherent sense of competitiveness. Does not mean that they know more or they're more competent, but they will just say that. And the woman then recoils, feels rebuffed, and doesn't come up the next time. Yeah, does that happen? Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot about man and woman also. And yes, if we put it under more of a generalization, perhaps women need to have more confidence as well. But it's a lot to do with the women, because women are very aware of what others are thinking. It's very important for them what others are thinking. In fact, they are sometimes masters at negative programming. They focus more on what is not than what is. Whether it be their hair, their dress, the comments of other people, the behavior of other people. Sometimes it's real and sometimes it's just a turn of the mind. And that is actually programming the mind. Now we all know about the principles of energizations. Many of you have read the book Secrets. When we keep on thinking about that, when we keep on programming that, then you're like magicians. Lo, behold, you create more negativity. It happens. It just comes in front of you again and again and again. At another opportunity, when we talk about the principles of energizations, you understand that how every thought of yours is sending out a signal to make it into a reality. Right? So the challenges, I think it's very clear now that some of the challenges are real and some of the challenges are perceived. Many more challenges, of course it would take another hour to talk about all the challenges that women have. These are just a few. So now, let's come, we spoke about coming to the part of solutions. Let's talk about the brain science. Okay, let's just take a minute to understand the business case before we go ahead. Since the 1980s, women have held 50% of all middle management positions in Fortune 500 companies. Yet, over the past 30 years, the percent of women advancing to senior management has remained low. All the reasons that you have quoted right now are the reasons for this. This is where women opt out. Or this is where women go into the HR roles. I had a gentleman once saying in a workshop, if there is so much difference in the brains of men and women, why don't women just stick to the women roles of HR, teaching, nursing? Why do we have to bring a woman into the Indian army and then sensitize all the Jawans to treat her like a woman? To which I say, every system has a yin and yang. Every system has a male and female. Every system requires the male and female energy. But these are the reasons where women don't go from middle management to senior management. And this is something which is very real and personal to each one of you sitting here. Because you have identified with all these challenges. And if something is not done about it, it affects your professional growth. I would say personal too. In 2010, only 15% of senior executives were women, an insignificant change from 14% in 1996. In 2009, less than 3% of CEOs were women, with no change since 1996. Women representation on corporate boards. Have a look at this. India is the lowest, 5. A 19-year study of 215 Fortune 500 companies showed strong correlation between a better balance of men and women in leadership positions and higher profitability. The 25 best firms for women outperformed the industry medians on all 3 measures of profitability. 34% higher profit margin, 18% higher asset value, 69% higher stockholder equity. The 10 firms with the very best balance of men and women showed greater profit results than the firms that were merely very good. Does that feel good? Yes. Proved beyond doubt the strengths of women and how important it is to have the feminine aspect in every industry, in every aspect of life. That is why it is so important to retain the gender diversity, the diverse strengths, the different strengths, equal but different. When two opposite forces come together in harmony, the result is pure creativity. That is what existence is all about. That's how babies are born. That's how life continues. Two opposite forces, but in harmony. Okay, now let's understand the brains. This research is for over 1 million in 30 countries and all continents. There are no known differences between men and women in terms of IQ, however much we would like to believe otherwise. Now this is a very interesting slide. A man's brain at rest and a woman's brain at rest. A woman thinks and thinks and thinks, and sometimes she thinks through the night. She gets up in the morning and says, I slept, but I was still thinking through the night. And a man who's wide awake, looking a bit zombie-like, you go to him and ask him, what are you thinking? And he says, nothing. And she says, how can you think nothing? You are lying to me. Then she'll say, but still, what are you thinking? Tell me. And he says, but really, nothing. And then he starts seeing that she's getting offended. And then the poor guy has to make up something. The truth is, he was thinking nothing. The corpus callosum. The corpus callosum are fibers that connect the right brain and the left brain. They are more in women than men. That is why women have web-like thinking and they multitask. So women can they can attend the phone, they can be working in the kitchen, they can even have one baby under one arm, and they can do all these things so competently. At office, they can be talking at home about the children, the next minute they can come back to the work at hand, they may be even signaling to someone there. All that is going on, and there's a whole lot of processing going on. A restroom is a very good example. Women go to the restroom for a lot of things. Men go with only one purpose. They do that purpose and come out. Women network in restrooms. They do makeup, they network. I met Varsha here in a restroom. And we've had a very great relationship since then. Do you remember Varsha? Yes. So, when a man is talking on a phone, he wants everybody, put down the TV volume, put down everything. Women can manage so comfortably and so smoothly. They go for a party, a woman is talking to someone, but her peripheral vision is seeing so much more. Who is wearing what? There is an affair brewing up. And who's actually putting on such a face but hates the other person? All of that. The man, he is totally unaware of it. And when she comes back home and says, did you notice this? Did you notice it? He says, no. He's probably looking at the bar, the food, and then the way out. Or maximum at the person in front of him. So, women can do web-like thinking. Now, in an organizational setup, how can that be such an advantage? Whenever a situation comes up, a woman can process much more. Several areas of her brain light up and she brings much more richness to the table. Her perspective is very important. It therefore becomes very important to ask for the woman's perspective. We just spoke about that women sometimes don't speak up. As a leader, you can invite their perspective. What do you say about it? What do you think about it? Most likely, she has something very valuable to add. If a man has something to add, he just says it. Right? Okay. But the flip side of this is that this same web-like thinking can sometimes become negative. The woman gets overwhelmed. Too much. It's like hypnosis. Too many message units. And suddenly she's stressed out. Suddenly she's vulnerable. Suddenly she starts forgetting things. She loses her keys, her phone, her specs. Oh, where did I leave that? Oh my God, my phone. Have you noticed when there's too much happening? You leave your phone behind, you leave everything behind. How many of you relate to that? Yeah. That's the flip side of it. So here we come to the complementing differences. A man's focus is sometimes so important. Women bringing a richness to the table with a lot of perspectives, including facial expressions and tone. Women are very sensitive to judge facial expressions and tone, which the men cannot. If I'm as a trainer in a workshop, I see your expressions. I see when are you getting bored, when do I need to throw in an exercise, when are you getting tired, when do I need to change course completely? Because I can judge and read facial expressions. As a woman, it comes easy to me. Yeah? So, with all that richness of perception, if the direction, the focus of the man, the complementing strengths can do wonders. I'm often asked why courtship period is so different. Why the differences don't show up in the courtship period. And to that I say that the men at that time are focused in result achievement. It's like a peacock strut. They take out all their lovely feathers and do the mating dance. And once it's done, they tuck their feathers under their legs and the peacock is the most ugly bird. So men need to move from point A to point B. And if they're distracted along the way, they are grumpy. Let's say you're going out and suddenly you say, oh, we should have taken some flowers. Can we just turn around the corner and take the flowers? And he says, no, we cannot. Because there is no time to do that. Whereas there is a lot of time. Because a man doesn't like to change course. How many of you relate to that? Yeah. Yeah. Because, correct. And that is something which has happened out of the course. The prescribed course. So, are we clear about how these can be beautifully complementing strengths? Are we clear about that? Yeah? Okay. The anterior cortex is larger in women. It weighs options. Should we do this? Should we do that? If we do this, these are the consequences. If we don't do this, these are the consequences. It's a whole lot of processing going on, which is good. But women, sometimes it gets too much. It gets too much for the men to handle. If at workplace you want to come across as effective, if you're giving too many options in a meeting and you sound unsure about those options, you're not being perceived in a good light. Even at home. Let's say you've had a discussion about a family vacation and you're talking about the maid also being on leave, the kids' school holidays, guests who wanted to come in at that time, a whole lot of things. You discuss it with your husband, the man, and he says, okay, I'm open to discussion right now. You discuss it, you freeze it, you come to a conclusion. Next day you come back and say, I want to revisit it. I left out a few things, I didn't think of that. Now that is going to drive him crazy, whether he's a husband or a boss. It's not a good idea. If all that processing has to be done, it's good to do it with a girlfriend or a female colleague. And then come with crisp points. You can have 4 or 5 points. You can discuss 4 or 5 points. It need not be only one. But also come up with solutions and not only problems, especially in the workplace. You go to your boss with a list of problems. He looks at you as ineffective and inefficient. For you, it's a lot of processing and a weighing that's happening, but somewhere we have to come to the midpoint. Retain our strengths, retain our inherent characteristics, and yet come across in a way that is looked as efficient, productive, and good. Yes? Speech center, we all know. Who is it larger in? Women. I don't have to go much on that. So, in every workshop, the men will ask me, is there something which is larger in men? In fact, in my last workshop, it was so interesting that at the end of the day, the men say, all right, if this is all nature and science, there's nothing we can do about it. Actually, they were looking morose when they said that. And I said, oh, wait a minute, that's not where we were supposed to be. We are saying these are complementing strengths. So then we went over it again. And in fact, I was really surprised that in that workshop, the feedbacks was phenomenal. It was almost 100%. So I think by going over it again, them traveling through that point of where they said, oh, okay, if this is nature, we can't do anything about it. But then understanding the differences are actually meant to be. None is better than the other. So amygdala is more bigger in men, which means action. Men like to give solutions and have action. If you just talk about problem with no solution in mind, you have a stressed man in your hand. For women say, if man says, if you cannot do anything about it, forget it. Woman says, if you cannot do anything about it, at least let's talk about it. And women hate it when men give solutions. You're just venting out, you're just sharing with him. And he comes up with, okay. You say, I had a fight with my boss. He says, so quit the job. You don't want to do that. And you were intelligent enough to know that if you had to do that, you would do it. So you look at him and say, oh, okay, and you move away. The next time you come back with the problem, he says, look, why do you talk to me about it? You never listen anyway. How many of you relate to that? So a good idea is to tell the men, I'm just venting out right now. I don't need a solution. Yeah, tell him about it, because you see, he likes point A to point B. He knows, okay, now course of action is just to listen. Yeah. And at workplace, putting too many problems without solution, not good for you. Limbic system, emotional memory. The woman's emotional memory, 8 times more. The blood flow to the emotional memory is 8 times more in women than men. That is why when there's a trigger, women will remember everything. This is what happened then, this is what happened now, you did this the first year, we got married, you never remembered my birthday, you never remembered my anniversary. All these events were such a disaster. And when you say all these things, the men look at you open mouth and say, my God, if you have so much venom against me, why are we living together in the first place? And then you say, no, it's not so much venom, it's only right now, because it's been stimulated that I'm feeling all this right now. So men need to be educated on that. Men need to be told, it's not such a bad situation throughout. It's just that the emotional memory center has been triggered and there's 8 times more blood flow. Okay, let's do a quick quiz. What percentage of men believe that both genders have an equal chance to advance up the corporate ladder? 58% believe that women have an equal chance. They're surprised. They're surprised. They think, why? Of course women have an equal chance, but women don't agree with that. What percentage of women believe that both genders have equal chance? Not that bad, but still a big discrepancy between 25 and 58. What is the top reason why men leave corporate life? What is the top reason why women leave corporate life? Not feeling valued. And they will not say that. What they will say, they don't want to burn their bridges. They will say work-life balance. But it's actually D. In conflict, men and women have different emotional needs. True or false? True. Men seek space, women seek understanding. How many people do men tell of a negative experience? Up to 3% only. How many people do women tell of a negative experience? Up to 32 people. So you're telling somebody about it, and then you go out and you're talking on the phone, again repeating it, and the person you first told to walks by, and you feel so sheepish and you feel bad, I'm telling the story over again. How many of you relate to that? Yeah. Who asks more questions, men or women? Women. Men and women are just as sensitive to non-verbal communication? False. What percentage of men aged 25 to 35 say they understand women? %. What percentage of women aged 25 to 35 say they understand men? 68%. Both men and women feel they need to improve their interpersonal relationship. True or false? True. Everybody feels frustrated on this front. Everybody wants to know more, improve it. 92% of men and women say they could improve their interpersonal relationships. What does nodding while listening mean when it's a woman? I'm listening, not necessarily I'm agreeing. What does it mean to a man? I agree with what is being said, otherwise he wouldn't nod. Bringing up an idea at a meeting. How does a woman bring up an idea? Stories, incidents, examples. And she asks other people for their opinions. What does a man do? Directly states the bottom line. What do you think to a woman means? Start a discussion. The discussion has just started. This is an opening. And to a man? Conclusion. I'm being asked for a closure. A colleague is experiencing a personal problem. What does a woman do? Ask for details and discusses. So we spoke about how somebody just said how they nurture, how they mother the team, how they include people in the team. And what does a man do? Solving the issue or avoids the subject. Like we said, forget it if you can't solve it. A woman is crying very often and a man will quietly, respectfully walk out of the room. She feels even more frustrated. I'm crying and you're going. He's giving her space. Arguments are best supported in women by personal experiences, and in men by facts, surveys, and careful logic. A good, effective leader, woman, inclusive, influential, a man who's in control, concise, and gets others to buy his vision. Success means to a woman being valued while accomplishing. I knew of a very senior lady who had contributed hugely to a merger, and after that she left because she said the way was terrible. Nobody valued me. For her, the whole way mattered. For the man, if the end result is good, he doesn't remember all of that. Winning is what is important. Okay, I think what women want is understanding before action, what men want is action. Okay, quickly I'm going to go through the stress. How many of you, a very serious and a very honest question wanting a very honest reply, how many of you here feel that your stress level, not in the last 2 days but in this phase of your life, in a scale of 0 to 10 is more than 7? Alarming. Alarming. Do you know what happens when, let's say, you are threatened? Let's say you think there is a terrorist attack, there's a bomb scare somewhere happening. What will happen to your body? Can anyone tell me? Adrenaline rise. You will be able to run very fast, or you will freeze. Heartbeat will be pumping. Pulse rate will be very high. You will be sweating. Why is all that happening, and why is it that you can run so fast? Obviously, there's some hormone in the body. There's a hormone called cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which helps in your fight or flight. Very useful in times of stress. But what happens if it remains high at a sustained level, the way you people are saying that our stress levels are more than 7, what happens then? High blood pressure, diabetes. Do you know that 20 years back, if a patient came to me and said, I'm 30 years old and I have high blood pressure and diabetes, I would get very alarmed. I would say he might be having a tumor somewhere. Today, I'm not at all surprised. More and more young people are getting diabetes and blood pressure because of the sustained cortisol levels. Very alarming. And then clinical depression. Do you know 1 in 4 women today are suffering from clinical depression? And clinical depression does not mean a low mood. It means something for which you should take medicines. And if you start those medicines, they continue for at least a year. How many of you know people who are on antidepressants? Yeah. Large number. So many of you are saying yes. This is because of cortisol remaining high. Now, what do we do about it? So there are 2 hormones, oxytocin and testosterone. The stress-reducing hormone in women is different from the stress-reducing hormone in men. It is oxytocin in women and testosterone in men. Oxytocin is a nurturing and nurtured hormone, which means for women to retain their inherent nurturing and nurtured is so important. Okay. Which means no time for family, no time for parents, no time for friends, no time for girlfriend lunches, no time for yourself, because adrenaline is posing as energy. That adrenaline high that you're getting at work is posing as energy. It is not actually. So you're so busy. You feel that addiction of success, of power, and you don't want to give it up. But when the women come to me for counseling sessions, to one-to-one sessions, they would say, I'm so stressed out, Dr. Niru. Why? Everything is going good for me. Why do I feel this horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach? Because the oxytocin is so low. Why do I feel everything is going to collapse? Because the oxytocin. She has no time. She has become so male-like. We spoke about aggressive female bosses. We spoke about the women believing that they have to act man-like. If I can't have him or his approval, then I become him. But I still don't get approval. But I still don't get love. Why? Because a man is not going to love a man. So you won't get that love. So important, girls, to raise your oxytocin levels by feminine activities. You know that sense of well-being, which comes when you're all women together like you have been in the last 2 days. You know that sense of well-being, don't you? You know it. You know when you have spent good quality time with your child, what a deep sense of satisfaction it is. You know that when you have spent deep quality time with your parents, what a deep sense of satisfaction it is. You know when you've gone to the spa, what a great sense of satisfaction it is. Or when you've gone shopping, even that raises the oxytocin levels. Online shopping does not. It recently came in the newspaper. Unfortunately, it's not yet sold over the counter. They actually did a research that oxytocin sprays, when the women used that spray, there were less marital conflicts. A stressed out woman is going to have far more conflicts. You agree with that? Yes. So this is about testosterone and how important it is, testosterone and oxytocin. For a man, you must give him, you can't expect the man to deal with only problems and no solutions. Midway is the answer. Coming midway, becoming a bit more concise than your inherent nature, giving solutions, asking for your needs, being more clearer, communicating in a way which is different, stronger, no tag endings. Women sometimes say a very strong statement, at the end of it say, isn't it? What do you think? So they make a perfectly strong statement into something weak. Need to change your communication style. Need to promote yourself. Need to understand it's okay to be successful. A lot of things we've talked about today. If you retain even a few, I think a new experience of your lifetime has started. Because when a woman reaches her glorious self, her energy is magnetic. And her sense of possibility is contagious. We have all known women who are full of integrity, joy, and love. They shine. I have known this state in many women and at moments in myself. And at this point, I'll share very briefly my own life experience with the intent, two intents. One, of showing how the worst of challenges can be overcome with determination. And two, to give you a bit of a diversity angle into it, the diversity angle of differently abled. So I have had this problem in my leg since I was 3 years old. Nobody was sensitive at that time. Schools, colleges were not sensitive at that time to disabled or handicap friendly. They were not. So I would actually wear skirts and I would wear pants under the skirts and feel miserable about it. The school did not allow me to just wear the shirt and the pant. They said the skirt must be worn. Toilets were not friendly at all. Stairs were not friendly at all. There were dance classes where all the children would go and I would be sitting alone. There were PT classes where everybody would go and I would be sitting alone. Those were some of the very touchy and maybe traumatic memories that I went through in my school and college. If that sensitivity was there, if people were more aware of the needs, I think my talent would have shown much earlier than it did. If so much of my energy was not spent in overcoming those challenges, perhaps success would have been earlier and even more. Then came the point in my life where my parents believed that I would not get married. And I got married to a person which was a terrible marriage. I lived in that marriage for 7 years. I had 2 boys. All by myself after that, I took the step of walking out of that marriage, which was absolutely no good, unhealthy. 17 years back, divorce was unheard of. I went through it alone. My parents were not with me at that time, but later my father said, I'm so proud of you. As an Indian father, I could not have done this. I then met my present husband, had a beautiful relationship with him, got married. In my second cesarean, my tubes were blocked because 2 children, everybody said, anyway, it's a bad marriage. After my second marriage, I went through an IVF procedure, test tube babies. I tried for 5 years. After 5 years, I was blessed with beautiful twin daughters. They're 11 years old today. And I have 4 children, and I have looked after my 4 children with the support of my husband, who's sitting right here at the end of the room. We have worked at our relationship, we have worked at the challenges, and today we honestly enjoy the most beautiful family and the most beautiful relationship. So when women rise above that, when women rise above all those limitations of guilt, self-sabotaging behavior, and when they reach the point where they are no longer impaired by the society who's really scared of ecstatic women, when you break through those clouds, I think then there's no stopping. Then people don't attack you anymore. And if they do, you don't care. And then you start attracting into your life very meaningful people who are really sent to you and who help you in your journey immensely. So the next time anybody says to you, you're too big for your boots, say, I haven't even begun yet. Thank you. I think we can now take question answers. Anybody wants to say anything? Any questions?
Okay, you were telling about that, isn't it the thing, usually when women answer something, they also add up a question in it. Why is that thing comes up in a woman? Basically, even I do it. I just answer it and also like, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? I just ask them for the justification or assurance, like, is it right? Is it right?
Yeah.
I don't make that conclusion, like, yeah, it is right.
Yeah. So that's because they're very unsure of themselves, constantly seeking approval.
Yes.
Not believing in themselves as much as they should. What is the other person going to feel about it? Is he going to approve or not? It is far more important than it should be. I think being aware of it helps. Next time, consciously you stop yourself from using those tag endings.
Okay.
Yeah?
I'll do that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. Yes.
And you avoid looking at the other person and talking. That stops your communication somewhere.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. How do you overcome it?
Yeah, so when we talk about the pain points, all the men will say this. Women cry, and that's so embarrassing for us. And you can't give them a proper feedback. This comes up in all the workshops. One gentleman said that one day the light went off, and I'd given a girl a feedback, and she burst out of the room crying in total darkness. He says, my God, my entire reputation was at stake. And then I asked them, okay, when it comes to handling really crisis situations, say a loss or a tragedy at home, is the woman less strong? Who is more stronger? And would you believe it? The men say the women are more stronger. Yes. So, then they are forced to think about it. If she cries, is it really lack of efficiency? No, it's not. It's just the trigger at that particular point. There's a hormone for that too. It's called prolactin. It acts on your tear glands. As soon as there's a surge of emotion inside you, whenever you're feeling intensely about something, the tear glands are affected by prolactin and you cry. But I think if men get aware, that's not weakness. If you get aware, that's not weakness. That's just the way your brain and your system is.
True.
And you're proud of it.
Yeah, I'm not talking about when you tear out completely.
Yeah.
It is just the wetness of your eye.
Yeah.
When you're facing a person, talking to him,
Yeah.
the wetness of your eye, you get cautious about it.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't let the other person know that your eyes are getting wetter.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
and you're
shiver.
struggling. You're
Yeah.
struggling hard to keep it
Yeah,
there.
you keep it there. You take your eyes off from him,
Yeah,
get rid
yeah.
of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You conversations go somewhere else.
Yes.
You're not able to complete your conversation.
Yes. So I think, that is so inherent. Like I was saying, it's so inherent, you can't do much about it. It's just the awareness that it's part of the woman's system, but she's not less strong for it. I think that awareness is enough. You cannot really do much about it. That's just like that lemon experiment. You could not do much about the juices coming in your mouth. You cannot do much about the tears that come at that point. Communication you can do a lot about, but you can't do much about this. Yeah? Any other question? That's it? Okay, so are we all feeling that we are taking back something today? Yes. Yeah? Can I see the show of hands when you feel that something real aha moments for you and that it's going to affect your life from here onward?